Okay, well that's my error. Um, well, we're at the kind of a break point where we go into anxiety. So let's just let's take a moment here and take a 5 minute break. And when we come back, we'll have a short video for you about anxiety. Uh, and hopefully nobody's stressed out right now. But we'll see you back in 5 minutes. All right, let's see. Waiting on Jim and Laura. All right, looks like we're waiting on just Jim, right? Well, we're gonna go and Jim can catch up with us. So we're gonna talk about anxiety for a bit, and this is uh, this is one of the significant issues I am quite sure you will encounter, if you haven't already, with people. It manifests itself in quite a few different ways. Um, and I thought I would start with a little video. I kind of like it as a just as a way of introducing the topic and in terms of the vibe that it gives. And so let's start with this little production uh, about anxiety.
Welcome, everyone. Every time you walk through these doors, you're taking steps to find yourself. Remember, this is a safe place. There's no judgment. You are accepted right where you're at, and wherever that leads, to find your own peace and happiness. Feel free to express yourself to release your anxiety. I want you to be able to walk out with inner strength to finally be free. Clayton, it's great to have you back. I know you don't like to share, but why don't you start us off tonight? We want to hear what you have to say.
I wake up, puddle of sweat. I have nightmares and I get back into bed. It's like these voices just keep playing on repeat in the back of my head, and I can't get them to leave me alone. 30 years old, but still hates being alone when I'm home, because that's when the voices get the loudest. Opening up like this is a moment far from my proudest, but these demons keep pressing me. I swear they're the foulest, but I've grown comfortable with their presence. My conscience is calloused. My dreams are their playground, my thoughts are their palace. I try to evict them, they return with more. Anxiety isn't an item you can return at the store. I was 10 the first time I had a panic attack. Like a punch to the stomach, there's no planning for that. And I didn't tell anyone because I was too scared about what they'd say. And I know deep down there was nothing they could do to take it away. It was my fight to fight and my battle to face. I remember that house I grew up in and how those demons would rattle that place. I'd lay awake at night just staring at the ceiling. I've spent my whole life trying to run from that feeling of being lonely, that feeling of being lost, that feeling of being sick when the lights turn off, that feeling of being depressed, that feeling of being anxious, that feeling of screaming to God, begging him to take this, only to get silence in return. I'd lay in that bed crying and I'd toss and I'd turn, and I turn and I toss to this day. The doctors gave me medication, the pastor said pray. I tried both and this anxiety still hasn't gone away. So forgive me if I fantasize about being gone today. I'm an actor who got really good at being on today, but when I turn off, I go right back into the shadows. I'm in the deep end now, but I started in the shallows, and I might just drown myself in these waves. Suburban hell, these homes are all graves. Everyone's coping with something but won't admit it. They're all too afraid, and these kids are glued to watching me. What do I say? If I'm honest with them, maybe they won't think highly of me. Everything they want me to be is what I'm dying to be. But everything I really am is what I'm not trying to be. I want them to know that they're not alone in their struggles. I wake up in tears and fall back asleep in those puddles. And I don't think I'll ever get out of this valley I'm in. Terrified that all along God has tallied my sins. And if he has, the number must be astronomical. My life is a joke and you keep reading just past the comic. Because everything you think that I am is far from the truth. I wish I could open up to you and just let loose. But my vocal cords get tight when the devil pulls on this noose. And then I'm back to keeping everything bottled up inside. But he's not gonna keep me from pulling the throttle back this time. He's not gonna keep me trapped like this. I can't get out of bed, I was never made to act like this. I'm packing up my bags and he can't stop me from running fast like this. I'm not gonna be a slave to these voices of anxiety. I'm shoving the devil back for every time that he lied to me. And I'm taking a belt to these demons who whisper despair in my ear. And I'm ignoring every naysayer who stands and stares when I'm near. I'm moving forward out of this slump. I took my bruises, I took my lumps. I fell down, but I got right back up. So give me a torch and let's light that up. I'm setting fire to the devil and I'm dousing these demons in gasoline. Look at you now. Now you're not laughing at me. Now who's the one who's being tortured and punked? Now who's the one closing every door that I want? Now who's the one watching the other burn to the ground? Don't look away from me. You better turn back around. I'm not done talking to you now. I'm watching your moves. I'm on your back and I'm stalking you too. And when you try to ruin some other kid's life, I'll be stopping you too. You took 30 years of my life and I can't get that back. You told me to end my life and I nearly got killed for that. You took me down but I bounced right back. I was lost then and I got found like that. And everything you told me I wasn't, someone new told me I was. And everything you hated in me, someone new told me he loves. And when you tried to kill me with depression and anxiety, he reached in and placed hope deep inside of me. So I'm done listening to you and letting you control me. I'm announcing it now that the devil can't hold me. I'm walking away from the old me and I'm demanding a refund on every lie that you sold me. You knew I'd find a way out sooner or later, and I found my escape in the form of a savior.
Clayton. We're here to help. Are you sure you don't want to share?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Any thoughts on that?
Seems like a support group for anxiety would be a pretty anxiety producing spot.
Yeah. I kind of like it because it's when he does the the message of the way he did it. That if you meet somebody who's really anxiety laden, they come across that way. It's rapid fire. It's um, it's short bursts like that, but in fact, I was just I did the math today. I had dealt with somebody who was highly anxiety laden, and back no, this is a few months ago now. 9 o'clock at night, he sent me a text message, and that was the first of 122 text messages sent me in about an hour and a half or less. And it was this rapid fire. My phone was going ding, 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 ding. And it was sort of that way. It was once that outer shell is sort of punctured, if you will, and they start, it is just a incredible release of consciousness headed your way. That was 122 text messages starting at 9 o'clock. Welcome to Pastoral Council.
I think that that's the way that a lot of these young rappers feel, like that guy that was in the video. Because if you ever listen to their music, it's really they're telling the story of their life. But other than that, they're quiet. They won't sit and have a normal conversation with the person, but they rap. They can rap. And they just put everything out through the rap and then they go quiet again. So, maybe a lot of them have more, anxiety and built up issues than what we're even aware
Mhm.
that they're having. I see young kids rapping all the time. You hear them rapping all the time, just walking and with your little, just rapping. But I never really realized, but if you listen to the lyrics, they're talking about their life or their situation that they've been through. But you don't really pay it any attention because that's just a fad. They all rap.
Right.
But other than that, most of them are pretty quiet, so they're just internalizing things.
Mhm.
And that's how they get their feelings out, I guess.
Well, I think also from our conversation earlier today, that, anxiety and uh, uh, significance and security are related. That if you are, because significance and security are sort of very base level um, needs. It's a very common, very much a base level of human need to know something about yourself in terms of purpose and that you're loved. And if you lack one or both of those, your anxiety level is apt to be very high because you feel very threatened and very much ill at ease in your own skin. It's like, well, what am I supposed to be doing with myself? And so I think there is a relationship there. So when this guy, for example, when this guy was sending me these 122 text messages, uh, there most of them are people don't understand me. Nobody wants me around. It's a sense of security and a sense of significance. Nobody wants me, and and he's just kind of pushing that out there, um, and and it's sort of it builds itself up because they have no way to release it to somebody else. There was this one study. It says 95% of admissions to psychiatric centers are related to depression and anxiety. So anxiety is a big deal. And so we want to talk about two different things about anxiety. There's situational and chronic. Situational or acute anxiety is sort of the thing where life is going along and you know you get a phone call um, that's sort of cryptic, that somebody that you know and love has been in a car accident. You need to get to the hospital, but nobody has any information. Nobody has any details. Well, your anxiety level just goes way up, and it's a situational thing. And you get to the hospital and you find out, well, they were in an accident, but they're okay. They're stable. There's maybe some minor injuries or what have you, but there's a treatment plan and etc. And things are going to be okay. So you kind of spike and then you come back down. It's a situational driven thing. It may be situational in the sense that it's going to take a while, and so you may want to have some opportunity to talk to somebody about that. Um, uh, but it's going to eventually bring itself down. Chronic is basically it's persistent all the time. You chronically feel every single day as though you are um, you are on high alert. Goes back to some of the uh, video we saw last week on ACEs, where you feel as though you're constantly under threat, you're constantly under the gun, so to speak, and so your anxiety level is always high, and you see everything. You start seeing everything through that lens. That everything that's occurring is occurring towards you. Uh, Somebody makes a comment in a group and you interpret it as, well, they only said that because they were trying to communicate to me this information. You become um, very much integrating yourself into the story when in fact you may not be part of it. I mean, I see this a lot where people say, well, I know that when, Joe said thus and such, that he really was, even though he wasn't talking to me, I know he was talking about me in front of me, because why would he have said that? And it's like, it because they're in chronic anxiety. The guys that I saw most, in fact, the one that texted me 122 times, and one other guy that I dealt with, both of them had chronic anxiety because they had both been recently released from prison. And so that prison environment creates the perfect conditions for chronic anxiety. And some of that isn't, may well be the case that you've always got to be on guard all the time. Everybody there's got some kind of an agenda or some kind of game they're running, what have you. And when they come out into the unstructured world that we live in, it's very hard to flip that off from being chronically anxious to not. And so it tends to take them a long time to wind that down. And some do not because they simply see everything through that lens. It's almost like a permanent set that says, I've got to be intense and believe that everybody has an agenda, even though 99% of the people don't. So if you wind up in any case where you are counseling somebody who has been institutionalized somewhere, or feels like they had been, then you're going to be dealing with chronic anxiety. It's not going to be acute anxiety or situational anxiety. You can't say, well, prison was a situation. Well, it was, but it was for a duration. So it really changes over to chronic. And my experience has been that pastoral counseling is better suited for situational than chronic only because not that we're not equipped, but it's back to how many hours, days, weeks can you invest in a single person and still do all of the functions of ministry. So does that make sense in terms of situational and chronic anxiety and sort of why one is more difficult than the other? Okay, ones that are more, we have our 8 here, anxiety producing events. That's an 8 issue. That's an acronym that somebody gave me one time. An anxiety producing event is an APE. And an APE can be some of these things: conflict inside and outside of a church. I know it's a shock that there could be conflict within a church, but there are occasionally ones that produce um, anxiety. A death is certainly an example of an anxiety producing event, people's stability, sense of mortality can really wreak havoc with anxiety. What am I going to do? I don't have enough money, or I don't think this or that. Separation and divorce, of course, are anxiety producing events. Unemployment is another one. Marriage is an anxiety producing event, can be, where it's somebody's taking on new responsibilities and it's like, I don't know if I'm up to this task. What am I going to do? And I mentioned release from prison. These are just some examples of things that can produce significant anxiety, where you may be asked to help in a pastoral counseling setting. So I think that seems like it's pretty straightforward on what can produce it. So that's that inner feeling of dread or unsettledness, often accompanied by heightened physical arousal. That was very prominent with the guys coming out of prison. They were super physically charged all the time, and felt very threatened by that. So anxiety is usually caused by a threat or a perceived threat. It doesn't have to be an actual threat. It can just be a perceived threat to something that isn't considered important. Getting a job, keeping a marriage going, what other people are going to think of me, loss of income, of course, loss of companionship, anything like that is going where there's a loss or even a threat of a loss or an actual loss is going to drive up the anxiety level significantly. Conflict, obviously, is similar. Fear of uncontrolled or unpredictable circumstances. This is a fear and anxiety are sort of go hand in hand. Now, one of the interesting things about fear, there's a great book I read called The Gift of Fear. It had nothing to do with counseling. It had to do with just intuition relative to fearful circumstances, and really kind of morphed into personnel security measures. But his point was, and it's something that people don't think about too often, the only thing we fear is something that has not yet happened. And people kind of think about that for a minute and say, what do you mean by that? You only ever express fear about something that hasn't happened. So you say, well, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my job. Well, you haven't lost your job yet, right? It's a fear. Now, if you lose your job, you're not afraid of losing your job. You've lost your job. So you never say, well, I'm afraid that I've lost my job. You may say, well, I'm afraid I'm not going to have money coming. But you don't ever express fear of something that's happened in history. I don't fear World War II. It's over with. I only ever express fear of something that hasn't happened. And because I only express fear of something that hasn't happened, as a counselor, that gives you the opportunity to say, well, since it hasn't happened, what are the things we might do to prevent it from happening? Or what are the things we could do to mitigate that we could start now that would mitigate it should it happen? You can start taking some positive actions when somebody expresses fear, because they're only going to express fear about something future, not present, not past. Now, the time difference between you starting and that event could be very short, admittedly. But generally speaking, when they're saying, I'm afraid of the future, that gives you an opportunity to say, well, then let's work in the present so that we're either not going to have that come out or it'll be mitigated somewhat. You have some options. And that is a big relief to the other person that says, well, I never thought of that. That I'm only afraid of something that hasn't happened. Thoughts on that point about fear?
One of my former pastors used to use the acronym of false evidence appearing real. And that was something that I just stuck with me because it really is true. It seems like the evidence is in, and it seems like it's all going to fall into place for the negative or the whatever's upsetting us. But that always helped me to put things in perspective.
Okay, good. I hadn't heard that one before. Other thoughts on fear as always future, not present? Well, play around with that one. It's actually kind of interesting when you postulate it, and it's really can be a very effective tool when you're dealing with somebody who's anxious because they're fearful. It gives you some way to give them some thoughts. Again, anxiety. This is continuation of what Larry Crabb talked about. It's really an unmet excuse me, an unmet need: security, identity, intimacy, significance. This just gets repeated again. That's really what is likely going on here, and so you want to be able to have an opportunity to reshape someone's mind or their thinking. Okay. Now, let me ask you a quick question, because as we look at this curve here on the bottom, I don't know if it's our favorite curve. It's one of my favorite curves. So if you're sitting there at 9 o'clock at night and somebody's hitting you with 122 text messages in an hour, where do you think they are on the curve?
Far right?
Yeah, they're pretty close to dysfunctional, right? And that's a dysfunctional person. So what's your behavior going to be as a pastoral counselor?
Well, you're going to try to get them to vent, and so that you can so that they can get it out of their system, so they'll move back up the curve, so they can come down a little bit, so you can actually talk to them. Because somebody who's sending you 122 texts in an hour is sending you 2 texts a minute. So that's the only thing you can do, is try to get them to vent, get them to talk to you about what's really bothering them, and then try to bring them back down the curve.
Right. So you can't counsel them when they're texting you like that. It's impossible. So the thing that you really want to do, as Jim says, you want to get them up the curve. And the way I found most effective is to slow them down. Don't try to keep pace with them on text messages. You won't be able to do it. And so you start slowing them down. You send them, you compose the text. You don't have to respond to every single sentence that they do. But pick something that you want to choose what you want to respond back to, and then say, you mentioned this, and take your time. Write a big text, slows them down, causes them to have to jump from what they were thinking to what you're thinking. And it begins that process of taking somebody who's, amped like this, and you're slowing them down, trying to slow their thinking down a little bit so that you have an ability to assess them a little bit better. As Jim says, you're trying to let them vent, but you want them to not vent and escalate. You're trying to let them vent to de-escalate. And if you can respond, I don't mean slow, like, okay, I'll wait 30 minutes and answer me. You're just giving them something that they can't give you a yes or no answer to. They have to do some sort of executive thinking. So it slows them down a little bit. And so you want to start that. The other thing, you're obviously, when somebody's at that dysfunctional state and they're high anxiety, and you feel threatened, you do want to read what they're writing to you to see whether or not they are expressing anything that would suggest that they're a threat to themselves or somebody else in that moment. You don't want to just miss that. So you do want to read as your phone is ding, 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 ding. You want to look at it and say, okay, is there a concern that I have here for this person in that moment? And if there is, then you may want to immediately switch and see if they'll pick up the telephone. A lot of times they're not interested in that. They like the text messaging. So you work with whatever means you can do to message. But again, don't forget to look at somebody's in high anxiety dysfunction. Look at the messages as well. But you really can't counsel somebody at that stage. Usually what I try to end it is, hey, this is a lot for me to take in a little bit of time. Might we get together tomorrow? So now you're planting a future thought, where you could talk it out a little bit. And now they have something that they can kind of lock in on that says, okay, there is a future. Tomorrow I'm supposed to meet with the pastor, or 2 days I'm going to meet with the pastor. And it gives them something of hope. I mean, that's hope and purpose. Now they have a purpose. They have somebody to talk to in a couple of days. So that's what I've done when people are in that kind of high anxiety, panicky structure. Just try to slow them down.
So George,
Yeah, go ahead.
if they're truly in crisis, I took a class from the ICISF in assisting individuals in crisis, which is, it's a different thing. But one of the things that they talk about there is they have a vertical axis, and the x-axis crosses between the cognitive and the affective.
Okay.
So if someone's had some inducing event to cause this dysfunction, then what you kind of do is you take them on a journey down from the cognitive into the affective zone, which is where they're fully emotional. And you're trying to understand or try to get them to tell you what's sticking with them, what triggered this, how do they feel about it. And then you have to be careful when you do that, because you have to actually have a plan to take them back up into the cognitive zone. And I've done that with some people too. Where it's like, okay, what happened? And then they'll tell you, okay, so what sticks with you about that? What's the part that bothers you the most? And then you start to ask them little questions to get them to start thinking. And one of the tips the instructor gave us was, if you can't get them to start thinking, then ask them to give you something, a bottle of water, a tissue, anything, because that'll break up their whole thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually does work. I've done it a couple of times. I mean, I don't have a ton of experience with this, but the algorithm really does kind of work. It's just, you got to be careful when you're down in that affective zone, because you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, no, I like the idea of asking them to do something for you, because it doesn't have to be much for them to have felt like they had a purpose, even a tiny one. And as you say, it can cause them to break their thought. The one thing that I may be more set in my ways this way is, if somebody says, well, I was fired today, that's what was the triggering event, I might say, well, okay, what happened? As though like maybe you didn't fully hear it. Well, I was called in and I was told I was fired, and gee, I really liked that job, and so forth and so on. I'm probably reasonably quick to say, okay, well, what did we learn from that relative to the next job quickly? Because as opposed to kind of dissecting, well, who said what, why did they say that, and kind of having them obsess over something that's already happened. It's happened. You know, generally speaking, when employers fire you, they don't unfire you. You can't go and get say, hey, I know you fired me, but could you kind of reconsider it? No. You know? So it doesn't do a lot of good to belabor that point. It's more, well, Jim, it's like, you do a hot scrub critique and you say, okay, well, what were the immediate lessons learned? And how do we not fall into the same gopher hole that we fell in here? And let's talk about what were the other opportunities that might be available to you now? Okay, so that job isn't available. Let's look at the other options that are available to you. I tend to try to get them more positively focused or forward thinking focused pretty quick, because the few people I've dealt with, boy, they can lay in that trough of the history for a long time, and I haven't seen where it's actually produced any good result. But I'm not familiar with that curve. I like the curve.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said I like the curve you were talking.
Yeah, so but the thing is, it's like you can't let them wallow there. You have to control them being there.
Yeah.
And because otherwise the whole thing just completely falls apart. But I have used that and it does work. I mean, it's worked for me in a couple of situations. And one of them was when my son's bus got hit by a car. Him and his friend were really worked up about that many years ago, right after I took the class. And I could tell they were really bothered by it. So I just told our neighbor, I said, I'm going to take the kids out for some coffee. And I just walked them through this whole thing and then they were over it.
Yeah. Good.
But the trick is what you said, you can't let them wallow in that and you can't lose control of the whole thing. Because you're not trying to do psychological counseling at that point. You're trying to provide immediate crisis relief, like a Band-Aid for a cut, not to belabor the point.
Yep. Okay, let's go on here that when we're dealing with anxiety, you don't want to, poo-poo somebody's perspective and say, oh, that doesn't make any sense. You can certainly ask, well, now why do you think that? What's contributing to your thought? But if you just sort of immediately shut them down and say, oh, that doesn't make any sense to me. Well, it doesn't have to make sense to you. You're trying to get them to make sense. And then you can start introducing, the right questions the right way. So for example, the book talks about, nothing will ever be right. She always hates me. My life is over. Then you want to start finding exceptions to that are work or things about their statement that is, not true. I've lost my job. Nothing ever works right. And you say, well, didn't you just have a wedding anniversary? Yeah. Well, how are you and your wife getting along? Oh, she's wonderful. Well, something's working right. Yeah, but she won't stay with me. Well, but wait a minute. Something's working. Let's, not lose sight of the fact that there are some things that are really working well. I like this one from Grief Share. The three immediate things is calm your body, help them calm their body, and then have them start working on controlling their thoughts, to slow the thinking down, to get more focused on what is the true, to Linda's pastor's reference, what is really true, not what appears like reality. What are the true facts? And then confront your fears. What are the things you're now worried about? And let's start putting together some positive things that can be done to either avoid those those fearful possibilities, or to mitigate the situation should they occur. So it's calm your body, control your thoughts. Now you're ready to confront your fear. All right. I wanted to talk briefly about uh, some self-care, particularly when you're dealing with anxiety laden people. So I tried to create this different, it's a similar image curve that we had before, and that I've shared with you with the, stress level and capacity. But let's look at it, similar shaped curve, but we're going to look inside the little dotted box. And so we're going to say at that point of the red arrow pointing up, somebody has come to us for counseling. That's our first introduction to this person in a counseling setting. Maybe we saw them in church, maybe we didn't. Maybe they're, the boyfriend of somebody who goes to church, what have you. And so this is our first introduction to this person, and they are on that downside. Their stress level is high, they're anxious, and so we're trying to work their stress level down. That's what we're trying to show here. And we're doing this counseling, and we're seeing some response to their problem occurring. And we meet with them, I don't know, pick the number of times, 3, 4 times, and their stress level has now gone down considerably, and they're now ready, as we're going to exit the right side of that little dotted box, that they don't really need to see us anymore. We think it's, that whatever the situation is has run its course, and so all is good. Now, we really don't know anything about them from that yellow star to the red up arrow, but we sort of fill in the blank and say, well, their life must have been this way. Life was going good. Something happened. Stress level went up. They came in for counseling. They entered the counseling box with a high stress level. Now they're leaving the counseling box at a low stress level. Counseling was very effective. And so this is what we believe is always true, right? We always believe this to be true, that somebody came in, high stress, leaves low stress. Counseling, pastoral counseling was a success. Well, so I brought this forward, and we see the green curve again, and we say this is what we envision will happen. Right? We're envisioning that this is what's going to happen. They're going to come into counseling at a high stress, and they're going to exit at a low stress. And so now we look at the red line, and this person comes into that counseling box at a high stress, and they come down a little bit, but they remain at what we think is a really genuinely high stress level. And so we start asking ourselves, well, what am I doing wrong? Because this person isn't going from that, is at that red line, they're not down to the green line. And I've done all of the tricks that I could think of. I've read books, I've done this, that, and the other thing. And they're not, their stress level is not coming down like I would anticipate it, or I would have expected it would. It's remaining high. And I hate to sort of abandon this person. Well, what may actually be happening is that the true stress level of this person before they came into counseling was naturally high. Because we don't know anything about the person before they come in. So when they came in, if we look from the yellow star now to the red line, red up arrow, they were already at a chronic stress level. We just didn't know it. We assumed that their life looked like that nice green line, where the stress level was low, an event happened, and now they're back to low again. Because we don't go backwards into time, we're always forward looking. We don't necessarily know that somebody who's coming in is always this way. And so when we've done our counseling and they've come down a little bit, we don't think we've been successful. When in reality, what we've done is return to their normal. Because we don't really know what stress level they had coming before, what their life was like before. And so you got to be careful a little bit that you don't consider everybody fits this sort of idealistic view that their stress level is always low. Some event precipitates it to come up. They come into counseling with you and it comes down to low again. They may have been high and you didn't know it. They were just at a higher level than normal, and now they're back to their normal, which is a high normal. Does that make any sense? Just safeguard yourself that because we don't know what's happening on the left side of the curve all the time, sometimes people are responsive. It's just not as responsive as we thought they were going to be. And part of that is that's the way they are for a whole other reason. And we're not going to be able to touch that. That's really going to require a counselor of a different sort that can do a long-term sustained counseling effort. And I found this a couple of times where I'm like, I don't seem to be making the progress. This person doesn't seem to be making the progress I anticipated. Then it's like, well, is this one of those cases where they have made progress back to their normal? And I just don't recognize their normal as normal, but it is for them. Not saying it's healthy, I'm just saying it is their normal. So be careful about self-condemnation when it doesn't look like counseling is doing much.
Well, there's another thing to look at too, and I was just ministering on this yesterday. Our job is not to do the fixing, it's to plant the seeds to let the Lord do the fixing. So we need to remember who we are, and we are not the saviors also.
Yep. We aren't, but we're also human. We tend to think that people will be responsive, people will actually meld their life in with Christ, and that things will be better. And when they don't, it can be very frustrating. And it can be, what is it I'm not doing right? Well, you may be doing everything right. It's just that you're dealing with somebody who is chronically fill in the blank, anxious, upset, angry, and you just didn't realize it. Okay, other questions, thoughts on anxiety? I think I've got a wrong date in there. It says it's already due. So I've got to fix the date. I've got the wrong date. So this week, I'd like you to work on the primary goal. And that's the first element in your template of how do you see your role as a pastoral counselor? What's your primary role? And that'll begin to start. There will be, there should be some evidence of how you also think problems develop will be expressed in there. Again, I'm not looking for you to write a 27-page write-up on each one of these. That's not the objective. The objective is that you'll have what you need, maybe a paragraph if you're really tight tight writer, couple of paragraphs that expresses what you see your primary role being in this thing called pastoral counseling. And as I say, there'll be a hint in there as to where you think problem development and biblical integration and formula for change and your role will all be hinted in there. It doesn't have to be fully explored because you'll have opportunity in the other sections to expand on that. But as you go back through the papers I've sent you, you'll kind of get the sense. And I think in the template there's a few sample questions that you may want to look at and say, okay, I'm trying to answer this sort of a framework question. And so take a shot at that. If you can get that in by Saturday, which is the 18th. Yeah, so these are all off by a week. So I'll fix those dates. So if you can get that in by the 18th, and I'll give you some comment back. Again, share them so we all see how we're thinking our way through this. And as you go through in each of these sections as you go along, if you want to amend and change prior section, by all means, do that. But give a shot at what you feel is your primary goal in counsel. And if you can start putting it into that template, that will help. It will save you from having to transcribe it later. All right, and I will send out an email with what I just said in text form, in textual form, and then you can respond back to that one. Okay, any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
I just have like one, like, because like I noticed like the sample papers you were like referencing things, like were there certain things you wanted to us to reference in each of these sections?
If it's you can and you should, if you're really kind of saying I'm following somebody's thought here, reference it. Yeah, put it in there as a reference, so that you can remember it later. I did one of these years ago. I pull it out every once in a while and reread it to remind myself, what did I think, and has it changed any? And it's been helpful because as I've gone through with certain people and I pull that out and I say, yeah, that was something I really should use with them this time. Or maybe I've changed a little bit in my thinking, but it is helpful to help keep you from losing yourself when you counsel someone and what you believe in. Because you can kind of drift a little bit without realizing. So yeah, add references by all means. If you're using the book, put his name and a page number so that others can say, okay, excuse me, where did you get that thought from, so I can read it and have benefit of it.
Okay, I just want to get clear, make sure I have this right. I am doing the primary goals for each one of our themes that we've given over the last 4 weeks.
Your primary goal.
Oh, my primary goal.
This is all about you.
For each one of the themes.
No, for you.
Or just my pastoral theme. Well, primary goal.
Yeah, as a pastoral counselor, what is your primary goal?
Okay. All right.
So it shrunk, right?
Yeah, it shrunk a lot. Yeah, because see, I was going to do my primary goal for each one of
No. What's your primary goal? So
just
it's only
for pastoral. Okay.
For you. Yeah.
All right.
So we got rid of that anxiety producing ape and got rid of that.
Look, I just don't have the hoodie.
There you go. Linda's got it. You got to keep pulling it forward.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We're almost invisible.
Oh, pull it back. Pull it back.
Yeah.
All righty.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else for tonight, and we'll be sending out, as I say, some emails and such, and Thank you all for your attentiveness. Forward to seeing you next Monday.
Okay.
All righty.
Alrighty.
Have a good night.
Good night.
You
Have a
too.
good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.